Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Infected Rain, Ecdysis, out January 7th on Napalm Records. This album has 12 tracks, 55 minutes in length, and this is the band's fifth full-length studio album. They are a Moldovan heavy metal band. As far as the structure of this record goes, I feel like this is their strongest to date. They were able to bring together two different worlds, one that's always been there and one that's perhaps a little bit newer to them. The one that has always been there has been the creative side, where each song has its own fingerprint, each song has its own approach, its own style, and it allows them to have a little bit of diversity and chaos within the overall design of the record, existing within the individuality of these songs. The difference with this album is that the strength of the individual tracks permeates and integrates really well with one another, creating strength in the collective. The album feels as one. It really feels like all 12 songs are pieces of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that you were able to see and understand once you go through the entire record. Once you move into the soundscape of this album, I feel like there's at least two layers to it. The top layer feels very uniform. This record has an incredible sense of balance throughout. There's elements of sound that stay true from the first all the way to the last song. This doesn't mean the album is repetitive, it just means that there's some elements that start to move and morph from track to track, but they always leave something lingering behind that you're able to detect and feel comfortable with, guiding your journey all the way through. Underneath that top layer, that's where the diversity exists. That's where the sound becomes a little bit more versatile, becomes a little bit more chaotic. A lot of that chaos or a lot of that versatility is really given by two different elements: the electronic elements of their soundscape and the guitars. The electronic sound on this album works really well. I didn't feel like it drove the experience of the record. At least to me, I didn't gravitate towards it. It added flavor, it added layers, it made the sound feel more robust, it gave volume, it created atmosphere, it made some tracks feel a little bit more melodic. So it added that diversity, but it made the sound overall feel complete, which is a very important element, without really changing the dynamics of the tracks and without necessarily pushing itself into the forefront in order to become the main focus on each and every single track. The guitars, the same thing. The guitars feel like they have different roles throughout the entire experience. The main difference between these two is that the guitars take always a center stage approach on every single song. The role in terms of what the sound is doing, pushing between heaviness and melody, is going to be there. That volatility is going to be there from track to track within songs themselves. But the fact that changes the dynamics is that the guitars are always in the forefront. They are the motor, or at least one of the motors of this record. They definitely drive the experience of the sound, they drive the experiences of the songs, and they connect really well with the lyrical themes in order for you to have a much clearer picture of what's happening on a track-by-track basis. On the other hand, you have the drums and the bass. They're a little bit more controlled. They feel like they're a little bit better grounded, more balanced, and there's not a lot of diversity happening there. I would have liked to see the drums slightly heavier on this album. There were some moments that the guitars were gaining momentum, the guitars were gaining volume, they were gaining intensity. Same thing was happening vocally, but the drums always felt a little bit in the back seat. I wanted them a little bit more into the forefront, not all the time, but perhaps the diversity that we see in the other sound elements, that same diversity could have been applied to the drums, allowing them to have some moments to shine, come into the forefront, give the album a little bit of a heavier kick, of a heavier drive, and help what is happening around them. So I felt like they were a little bit subjugated to a secondary role, but they don't impact the overall quality of the record. They just take a little bit away from that intensity that could have been elevated from a 10 all the way to an 11. The other motor of this album is Lena with her voice. Phenomenal. This record is really one of those albums that you come in and you immediately gravitate towards the guitars and the vocals. These two become the pillars of the foundations of this record. Everything is around it in order to complement the sound and the experience. Her voice is phenomenal. The range, the movement between cleans and harsh vocals, changing the mood, changing the atmosphere of the songs, within the songs and from song to song, really allows this album to have a lot of life. There's certain moments within this record that the sound itself becomes backdrop to what's happening vocally, and the vocals really become the dynamic element that changes the eyesight of the listener as you're progressing, really pulling the strings and becoming the puppet master, if you will. Phenomenal vocal performance. I really enjoyed the screaming vocals, but the clean vocals, the more melancholic, the more introspective approach was outstanding. It just really elevated the quality of the tracks, and it elevated the lyrical content, which is an important element for this band, specifically for this record. Overall, this feels like the most complete album that they've released. I've always felt like there was something missing from this band, or there was one element that was really throwing me off from really enjoying the overall experience of listening to a full record going from beginning all the way to the end. This record feels like it has almost all the right pieces in the right place. The perfect structure, the perfect balance, that sound continuity that exists, that sound balance that it's there across all 12 tracks. Incredible vocal performance, really expanding on the range, but perhaps understanding the dynamics of the songs a little bit better and the mood that exists within those songs, and then fitting the right approach to the right mood, outstanding throughout the entire album. The guitars taking that center stage, driving the experience, being the motor of this record, subjugating those electronic elements more into the background, creating more of a layer and not necessarily letting them decide exactly where you're going as far as the sound experience is concerned on this album. So when you put all of these things together, in my opinion, at least for my own personal taste, this is my favorite record from Infected Rain. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Longing. Electronic sound blended in with heavy and chunky guitars starts to create this wall of thickness, this intensity that just always moves towards the listener, or at least it gives you that experience of moving towards you. The vocals cut through that. They feel like they're able to push through and come a little bit more into the forefront. Moving from screaming into clean vocals allows the sound to stay balanced in the background, at least that's the perception that you have. And the vocals are really what's changing the flow of the track itself. The ebbs and flows that this song have are happening more vocally than they are musically. Musically, things feel a little bit more compact. This makes the song feel dynamic in a very different way. So it's a nice style and it's a nice approach, something that complements the overall big sound that the track has. Next, we have These Walls, a more melancholic style track. It doesn't have that same grit, it doesn't have that same intensity. It takes you into a very dark room, at least emotionally. I really felt being transported into a much darker side of what this album has in store for the listener. It allows the heaviness and intensity to coexist, but they coexist not necessarily together at the same time. They just coexist within the track design and within the overall flow that this song has. It allows itself to be volatile at times, and it allows itself to be darker and more melancholic in others. It really keeps these two worlds separated from one another. There are a few times where the two worlds kind of come together, but when the more melancholic side takes control, the whole track almost feels like it changes on a dime. So it has a much stronger grip on how you feel towards the song, on how you're going to perceive this song overall. Last but not least, Never the Same. Great guitar sound on this track, melodic, heavy, super engaging track, perfect backdrop for the vocal performance. I really felt like they created a song where all the right pieces are in the right place, and then the vocals come in and they just sound perfect. They really match everything that is happening musically, or the music behind it is matching everything that is happening vocally, depending on how you want to look at it. But when the song becomes heavy, the vocals become heavy. When the song becomes more melodic, the vocals become more melodic. The two are always intertwined. They're going exactly where the other is taking them. And that makes the song feel volatile but controlled at the same time. I love this track. I love the energy that it has and the movement that it carries the listener through from beginning all the way to the end. This is it. Infected Rain with Ecdysis, out January 7th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.